Hello, everyone. Welcome to this exciting LinkedIn Live panel discussion. We've gathered a group of brilliant minds in the GCC space, and we will be discussing the topic Trailblazers in the ecosystem, levers of innovation, growth, and resilience. I'm Bharat, Vice President at Everest Group, and I'm part of our advisory practice for GCCs and GBS organizations. I'll be your moderator for today's engaging conversation. We have Pradeep from HSBC, Vishal from Fiserv, Raja from Roche, and Sukanya from NASCOM alongside. I can see our listeners starting to join in. It'd be great to know where you are joining in from. I'm joining from Chennai. I know Sukanya is joining from Bangalore, and we have our panelists joining from Pune as well. Where are you joining in from? Do drop in a comment. While this happens, in the meantime, let me take this opportunity to set the context for this discussion, right? As most of you are aware, we recently completed the fourth edition of NASCOM GCC Awards. Everest Group has been the proud partners alongside NASCOM for the second time in a row. Today, we have winners from three categories, exchanging perspectives on topics ranging from innovation to talent management to GCC evolution. As we get started, I want to encourage all of you listening to this conversation to actively participate. Drop in your questions, thoughts, and insights into the comments box, and we'll do our best to address them during the conversation. Our panelists bring in a wealth of experience and expertise, and we are here to explore, learn, and exchange ideas. So, without further ado, let's meet our distinguished panelists and kick off this enlightening conversation. Vishal.
Thank you, Bharat, and welcome all. Before I introduce myself, a bit about Fiserv, right? We are a global leader in payments and financial technologies. Our clients include financial institutions, which is most banks, a lot of corporates, and also merchants. And we are across 100 countries, powering more than 10,000 financial institutes, 6 million merchant locations, and about 12,000 transactions per second. We consider ourselves the original fintech, right? And our legacy is pivoted on innovation and commitment to client delivery excellence. Right? Customer global services.
Okay, looks like we just lost Vishal, but let's continue. Pradeep, maybe you want to go next.
Sure. So thanks a lot, Bharat, for having us on the panel. And
Raja?
Yeah.
Warm welcome to everyone who's joined it and taken out time to be a part of the session. I'm Pradeep Menon.
Hey, looks like there's a minor glitch. I'm pretty sure we all face that in our ongoing work. And in the meanwhile, Raja, maybe why don't you start with your introductions, and we'll soon have our other panelists as well joining in.
Yeah, thank you, Bharat, for having us. We had two introductions cut midway through. I hope mine goes through, completely through and through. My name is Raja. I represent Roche. Roche is a 125-year-old healthcare biotech organization headquartered in Switzerland, Basel, with operations pretty much in every country in the world. It has two major units, pharma and diagnostics, and we belong to a unit specifically focused on digital areas, which is currently embedded in the diagnostics unit. It's called as Roche Information Solutions India Private Limited. True to the award that we won, Rising Star, we are relatively new in our journey, incorporated less than 2 years back. And ever since, we've been growing from strength to strength. We're about 350, close to 350 headcount recently. And we are an innovation engine in the digital space for Roche. We play a key role in building products, developing solutions, which are powerful in helping Roche stay ahead of the curve. And critically, we are a GCC that's innovation focused, and that's pretty much in our DNA. Stems from the most basic things like the kind of patents that we file, the kind of cutting edge products we do, on to fundamental decisions we make on a day to day basis. And the upcoming site we are building also meant to foster innovation across the board, actually. So that's a brief introduction. I'm a technology professional myself with close to 25 years of experience, have been in GCC space for close to 15 years, worked with three different NASCOM presidents, now with the third one. So wonderful time and looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Raja. Vishal.
That was infrastructure for us, right? So quickly about us, we are global services across 4 locations, close to about, and we've been here from 2005. So we are in Chennai, Pune, Bangalore, and the NCR area, right? Let me talk a bit about myself. Vishal Pratapan. I lead the engineering, innovation, and the transformation charter for global services. And I work across all business units across Pfizer, giving them different capabilities which didn't exist before, and also helping them build the innovation mindset across locations. Thank you, Bharat.
And Pradeep. Okay. Maybe Sukanya, you can go next. We've worked together a lot on the GCC awards. You're a GCC guru in some ways. Would love to hear more about you and an overview of the awards program in itself.
Yeah. Thanks, Bharat, and hello everybody joining us here. I start my introduction with a small prayer and hope that my connection continues to hold. Thank you everybody for joining. At NASCOM, I don't want to introduce NASCOM. I'm assuming most of our people joining here have some view, if not the total understanding of the breadth of things that we cover. But at NASCOM, what I look into specifically is 3 things. I drive the growth strategies for the GCC segment, Global Capability Centers. I look into the BPM segment as well because there is significant overlap of the kind of work that gets done. I'm also driving the strategy to build the next emerging hubs in India. How do we build more locations that can drive high-end IT BPM work? And that's my role. GCCs have been always a very, very critical element of the Indian tech ecosystem. When I say always, I obviously mean the last 20 years. While I would say that there are many GCCs now who have completed 25 years in India, the momentum really took off a decade to 12 years back, right? So maybe at around 2010 is when the momentum really took up, and this concept and this GCC as an entity started to being understood. Cut to today, GCCs employ almost 1/3 of the entire IT BPM population. They contribute to almost 1% of India's GDP, which is huge. They represent organizations that do banking work, that do retail work, that do heavy engineering, enterprise software products. You name a segment and you'll find at least 10 to 15 strong GCCs doing high-end work in India. So the segment is diverse. The segment has brought in a lot of exposure to the Indian talent in terms of how global markets function, how various industry segments function, what is a futuristic outlook in those segments, even industries which don't necessarily have a strong presence in India, but their GCCs have a strong presence and bring in a certain perspective that would have probably been missing in the ecosystem otherwise. And so GCCs represent the great work that the industry has been doing in more than one ways, be it the technology excellence, be it high-end processes. Today, there are organizations that manage their treasury, that manage their risk portfolio, that manage their entire analytics COEs from India. and be it also in terms of bringing perspectives of global processes, global compliance, global standards and working, all of that. And when we started the GCC Awards, it was really to bring out those stories of, inspiration, those stories of achievement, those stories of resiliency, and just keeping at it over the journey and shaping the future for really the organization and in process even for India. So this year, when we launched the GCC Awards, we focused on 5 areas of importance. Innovation with impact, and when we said impact, we meant really tangible impact, and not doing something in the long run and really not knowing where it's going to move the needle, but innovation that is really whose impact can be quantified. Excellence in shaping future value proposition. So what are those 5 things that your CEO has called out as critical areas for the growth in the next 5 to 10 years? And how is the or GCC driving initiatives, programs, or functions to achieve some of those goals that are going to be critical for the growth of the organization? Stellar distributed and operating model, of course, because we've just now settled into the new normal, and now NASCOM has said that this is a year of no normal, which means that things will keep evolving. But what are those models that have come? What are those new capability areas that organizations are really investing in? And COVID became a very great accelerator, because a lot of things that were assumed cannot be done remote had to be done remote under COVID, be it maybe in the same home location or the same geography, but still remote. And of course, very, very importantly, Rising Star and the people who took very, very risky bets during COVID, set up their operations, and have now suddenly been able to create very strong value proposition, even with this hybrid world and this remote world. And we celebrate, um, these case studies, and we celebrate these organizations. And when we looked at all the entries that we got, which were for more than 150 organizations, we realized that the case studies and the impacts and the stories are diverse and deep, which means that we saw pick up any area and we saw excellent case studies and such inspirational stories about how challenges have been identified, navigated, and solved. And here we are today to talk about some of those really strong organizations and case studies, and what we heard and saw during our evaluation, and now we wanted to share it with the rest of the industry. So happy to be here and discuss.
Great. Thanks, Sukanya. Thank you all panelists once again. Welcome to this conversation. The first theme that we wanted to pick up today is around innovation. Yes, it has been a focus for quite some time, but this year during the GCC Awards also we saw some exemplary case studies and initiatives driven from India. Totally cutting edge, newer solutioning, newer thinking, more customer centric focus, and so on. Maybe Vishal, maybe we start with you. I know one of your mantras is innovation not as an event but as an ongoing part of the DNA. And at some level, at Pfizer, you've also been able to bring together diverse groups and drive a very concerted focus on innovation. I'd love to hear more from you on what have you done that is helping you set yourself apart.
Sure, and thank you for that question, Bharat. We do strive to live our innovation promise on an everyday. Like I said, we pivoted to being an engineering and innovation hub. So we are moving from innovation being a event-based situation for us than getting into where it's in our DNA. It's like in everything that we do. And the most important part is we innovate on behalf of our client. Okay. Now, what does that mean? We don't necessarily innovate for Pfizer. Yes, we might do a few things, but we innovate for our client and then make sure that it makes a difference to our client. It makes a difference to the customers of our client on an everyday basis, right? So that's our fundamental philosophy. So if you put yourself there, right, the situation for client changes every day, right? That means we have to do something different for them every day. And we have a very easy framework around this, very easily understood framework, which is like what we internally call as the 3 I's framework, which starts with inspiring, innovate, and then see the impact. And this cycle continues, right? Because as more and more people see impact, they want to get into the other. It inspires and then get into innovation by themselves. Now, what's Inspire about, right? Inspire is about the entire ecosystem. It's about collaboration. It's about associates and all of us understanding what's going on in the mind of leaders, what's going on in the minds of customers, and what's going on in the ecosystem around us, right? Which is the fintech industry that's outside of us, right? So getting those ideas within, getting the right kind of sponsorship, getting the complete alignment around it, that's really the collaboration part. And when our associates start relating to the problem, now some of these problems come ground up, right? Some of them come from leaders who are looking at Horizon 2, Horizon 3 situations, not necessarily what's happening today, right? So it's really having those conversations, having that collaboration, getting it and inspiring our associates, right? Once you have this associates bunch who is like totally inspired, then we get into the innovation part of it, right? Now, again, innovation doesn't happen in itself. Innovation is also, while everybody thinks that one day the light bulb goes on and then innovation happens. No, it is purpose driven. It is a purposeful attempt to change our life every day, right? So we have well-defined structures and frameworks around this. We have, and I'm just going to name a few, right? We have a program called the Business Innovation Group, which is like our internal product incubator. Then we have day-to-day a framework to solve our day-to-day situations, right? It's called Solve for Delight, and many more of these things. And this helps curate problems, make the problem easier for understand, get to the core of the problem, and then have the ecosystem understand what are we solving for. Now, once that is understood, right, then it gets into actually collaborating with everybody else, right? You may not have the skills, you may not have the domain knowledge, you may not have the right level of sponsorship. So that's where the second part of the equation comes in, is collaboration and making your stakeholders align to what you're seeing, or your stakeholders aligning to what they are seeing, right? And finally, it's really the enabling ecosystem around it. So you have the framework, you have the collaboration and the skills, but you still need to have the enabling ecosystem. And this is where training comes in. This is where providing platforms for them to go and experiment in the form of sandboxes and such comes into play. And also recognizing the innovation, right? And then for that we have a platform called the Leader Hub, where folks get recognized because of the great stuff they're doing. Now, like I said, ideas could come anywhere, right? These ideas need to be tracked, they need to be qualified. So there is an internal platform called Idea Hub, which helps us prioritize on the ideas, curate the ideas, see where it is in the life stage, and then get the proper alignment. And finally, when all this is said and done, right, it's great to recognize the associates who are doing this kind of work. So that's where we have innovation showcase days, we have success stories and such. So what I'm driving at is really it's a 360-degree concept effort. It has everybody involved, and it's also an enabling ecosystem around it.
Got it. Very inspiring indeed. The 3 I's: inspire, innovate, and impact. I think a lot of us can inculcate part of that in our journeys as well. Often there is a question that comes up, and Raja, I'm going to request you to share your views. Right? How forward-looking should innovations be? Is especially in the business that you are in, right? Ultimate goal is to get drugs, for example, faster to patients, but there could be more to it as well. So how do you balance focus on futuristic versus quick wins, and how do you go about your innovation priorities?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question, Bharat, and Vishal. Thanks for setting the context and the elaborate structure that you mentioned. Very, very inspiring. To your specific question, Bharat, we are a healthcare organization, and anything when you talk healthcare and all that, we're talking about innovation that happens not at all in months and years, and sometimes we're talking about decades. I mean, it takes a lot of time to get any reasonable, high quality healthcare innovation out to the market. So we're talking about thinking in a really long term. That's good and that's nice, but we soon started recognizing as we set up the GCC here that while you look at the long term, the short term and the mid term is not something that is to be forgotten as far as innovation is concerned. Else, you have the key stakeholders. I'm talking about not just the internal stakeholders, but also the external. Pretty soon, missing the focus on what is going on actually. It's a little bit similar to what we teach our kids in school. You enroll for a class and you don't just wait for the final examinations and do nothing in between and then hope that it just works out. You have all of these small unit tests or terminals and all that to kind of ensure that you're exactly progressing in the right direction before the final then produces the right kind of results. Exactly to that, in the GCC, we recognize that it is vital for us to focus on the short as well as the midterm. And in conjunction with two groups within our organization, Pune site, one is called the site functions team, the team responsible for anchoring the whole unit in the right direction. And then with the other group, which is the business units, we came with a concept of site as a COE with a specific focus on innovation being the key pillar and all that. I won't go into depths of what exactly those steps are. I think Vishal covered a lot of those things. We have it in some shape or form here, but we focused on a few critical things, and one is demystifying innovation. Sometimes the word innovation produces fearful thoughts in the mind of people. Probably a PhD from a Stanford is the only one who can do it, or maybe I can't do it, etc. We made it a little bit easy for people to recognize that anyone can innovate. You can be an admin individual or a procurement person or recruitment person, or anybody can innovate. It's just a thought process of recognizing that you need to be a little bit different, you need to look at the end goal, and you need to do things in a different way. So this thing is something we embedded deep in our organization, and we soon started finding results from a routine way of doing things that we were in 2021. Just a year later, and now in the second year, we're talking about filing our sixth patent. Normally, it takes tons of years to file. We're talking about the fifth, sixth. I wrote a message just 2 days back from the site in a very, very short duration. And we found that this then, when cascaded to the parent organization and over, sets the base for innovative thinking and all that. So yes, long-term innovation is important, especially in an organization like ours. But I would very strongly focus on the short and the midterm focus as critical aspects to achieve that long-term focus. And the course correction that happens when you look at the short-term, midterm sets the organization for success in the long term. So those are some of my takes on that particular topic.
Got it. Thanks, Raja. It's a balanced view for both futuristic and near term as well. Pradeep, I know HSBC has been a leader, pioneer in driving a lot of these initiatives as well. Love to hear from you, especially if you can talk a bit more about how you are helping get closer to the customers. Because one aspect that both Vishal and Raja touched upon is how innovation works best when you're getting closer to customers, getting that business context. You can talk about how you're enabling the GCC to drive that. That would be great to learn.
No, thanks a lot for that, Bharat. First of all, I just need to apologize. I probably had a bit of a choppy connection on my office network. But I think I've sorted it out now. Yeah, so apologies for that. I'm very impressed with what Vishal spoke about, the 3I framework, Raja's fact that, it's already for a young organization, the sixth patent. Raja, kudos to your team for having made that happen, right? I mean, those things are just fantastic. But in general, as a GCC who's been around for a while, one of the things that we have also come to the same conclusion is you can innovate, but to innovate, you require context. And that context is something that every engineer in the organization or every technologist who works in that space, or even it can be a process expert, doesn't necessarily have to be a technologist, they need to imbibe. And somewhere along the line, as the GCCs have evolved, that context setting is something that might be some organizations have not done as good a job as we could. I think we've had our own learning curves. I do admit that compared to some years ago, the context that the average engineer had in the organization around certain things as to why they're doing that, how does it affect the end customer, how does it affect the organization's ability to serve its customers, those were things that we weren't talking about as much. The first way to fix that problem has of course been to accept the problem. So I think quite some years ago, I think probably 5 or 6 years ago, we came up to the conclusion that we need to probably do more. We've got great engineering culture, but to innovate, you really need to solve customers. So I think there were a lot of focused attempts that made to happen. I think there was a framework that we came up with, which was called the Open Catalyst Invest and Accelerate sort of a framework, where initially it was all about leveraging external propositions and capabilities in driving that change within the bank. So what does it mean? How much more can we do with the existing people and so on? So that was one tenet that we went behind. There was also this thing about if you're going to do certain things in the digital space, do it at scale, right? Because when you take a small idea and then you build it, it's great. You learn a few things. But if you're going to take that small idea and try to take it and try to deliver it at scale across markets or across disparate customer bases, then the organization learns that much more from it, correct? Which also allows you to build context. There is no substitute to human interaction, and the fact that we can have our people reach out to the customers, spend time with them, be part of the business side of the business teams, as we call them in the banking world. So those are all some of the things that we tried. They seem to have worked well. Try to accelerate. I think just to call out some very specific areas, we've had emerging trends, right? I think, of course, there is always what we do in the green tech, in the CBDC kind of a world, but there is even more that we've had with probably 120 engineers who have worked on a certain distributed ledger technology and delivered a tokenized system in that space. And I think that's something that took the world by storm. We were among the first in certain markets that we released it. I think that was interesting. We've had a few different onboarding platforms that have come in, our ability to do fraud detection, incorporate AI into it. But what is more important, these projects are always going to be delivered. But the fact that our engineers can learn that, and one of the things that we've also focused on is that the learning that's come in is not lost, right? So the next generation of engineers, when they come in, the previous engineers who have learned lessons on it, they actually make it a point to impart some of it, right? So those are some of the things that seem to be working for us, Bharat. But yeah, that's probably my take on it.
All right. Oh, great, thanks. And I know Sukanya NASCOM has also been playing a big role in enabling the innovation ecosystem. And I'm pretty sure you have seen many other leading GCCs drive this. Anything that you would want to share for our listeners?
No, I think most of the points have been covered. I'm not going to focus on too many things that have been spoken about. I think two things that I think has shifted for a lot of organizations in the last 2-3 years is how you're building the risk appetite within your leadership, right? I mean, the encouragement that organizations now give to leaders to take risk, to fail fast, to celebrate failures, and to talk about the lessons learned, I think has been a great learning. Traditionally, GCCs, have been risk averse, pick up something, focus on it, do it, not necessarily very experimental. But that has shifted significantly, I would say, in the last 5 to 7 years, and that has accelerated the journey for many of them. The ecosystem collaboration, how do you work with your customers, GCCs in India? How do you work with colleges, campuses, startups? The number of startup incubators that GCCs run today are incredible. Close to probably 150 organizations have very formal incubators, and I would say another 300 work with startups in some form or the other. So how do you learn from those experiences? How do you create and leverage them as parallel channels so that you effectively enhance your bandwidth and you just do some of your risky projects or with leveraging that ecosystem? I think that has been a clear winner for more. And one another thing that I want to highlight is just the shift in conversation and how you demonstrate value. The work that you do remains to be the work that you do in many cases, but how you articulate the impact in terms of business, and I think Raja did touch on it, is how do you have that conversation with your global counterparts, right? You speak their language and talk about how you've been able to move the needle for that person. Suddenly, opens door for other things that can be explored. I think those have been a few shifts that we have observed in our conversations in the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years, which I think have just kind of acted as catalysts and catapulted the innovation journey for many organizations.
Got it. Got it. Thanks, Sukanya. Shifting gears, right? We spoke a lot about customer centricity, long-term innovation, futuristic focus. One of the other parts to this is, you know, managing internal talent within GCC, more specifically on employer branding, right? 5 7 years back, employer branding, yes, was an important topic, but perhaps it's now become much bigger theme than what we used to see earlier as well. I'm curious to understand, maybe Pradeep, if you can start first on what are some of the efforts taken by the GCC to strengthen your employer branding, probably even need for stronger communication, storytelling aspects around that. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, no, no. Thanks a lot. I think it's a very pertinent thing, Bharat. As you rightly said, sometimes we can make the mistake of taking these things for granted and just assuming that as the GCC brand grows, the employer brand will grow with it. I think sometimes these things need to be done very deliberately. You cannot leave them just to the success stories, and you need to actively tell stories. I think a few things that things that we seem to be working on and seems to be delivering value for us is if you look at the ecosystem of building a brand, it depends upon multiple tenets. One is, of course, ensuring that your employees get that, your existing employees get that brand. I think that is very important. The second important tenet is going to be the fact, or the pillar is going to be the fact that your potential employees or the talent that's going to come into the org gets it, that they are aware of what they're dealing with. Your customers get it, the larger industry ecosystem around it gets it, and so on. Now, I think each of them has its own style. I think as far as employer branding to its existing employees concerned, there are of course multiple internal communication modes, vehicles that we have in place in terms of either mass communication or media communication mechanisms that come in. I think those things are working. We use social media to a good extent, and then that's something that the bank's been very particular about it, and that actually helps you reach out to the talent base out there in the market. That's something that again we have doubled down on in terms of our investments, in terms of the effort that we're putting in to make that happen. That's important, and also the changing ethos or the changing the needs of the talent base that are coming in. Because I think if they're going to be on Instagram, you better be on Instagram. You cannot not be where your talent base is going to be, right? And of course, you've got to work through the implications of what it means and so on. The brand power report has actually also meant that as a brand, and again, for HSBC specifically, our learning has been you cannot grow the GCC brand because you're coupled with the mother brand, which is the bank. So our almost every effort that we make in the branding space is HSBC in India, right? Is about the bank in India, and you'll probably most of you would, when you get off at various touch points where customers would interact, you'd find the brand being positioned there, and that actually helps the GCC in as much as it helps our operations in India get the message across as a brand to it. So all those things seem to be working. Yes, this is of course going to be a learning journey. I think whatever you do, you can probably do better in the coming years. So I look forward to hearing more of your views. I think whatever works, we'll probably adapt and move on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. At least we've seen two things, right? One is the structural elements to the key pillars that drive employer branding, and then the other one is around the communication side as well. Both have a critical side to it, as you also reflected, Pradeep. Vishal, just curious to hear from your side as well. What are some of the initiatives driven from Pfizer's side to help strengthen your employer branding?
Right. Bharat, great question, first of all. And Pradeep, I think you hit on some of the very key things, right? The trend is employees or the talent pool with its changing
Oops, so slight glitch. Raja, any thoughts from your end?
Yeah, no, thank you. So for years, I come from consulting profession, so customer was front and center of attention. Even before you eat food, you talk about customers is all that I was taught. So that's all I focused on. And then some years ago, I read a nice book called Employees First, Customers Second. And the title was catchy. The HCL CEO wrote that book, and I read it just for the heck of it. I said, okay, what's this gentleman talking? How can it ever be possible? And ever since that time, I have been extremely influenced and impressed by that book, because if you want to create lasting value proposition and true innovation, which was the theme one that you spoke of a little while ago, that's not going to happen if employees of your organization are not front and center of your attention. Otherwise, you will just have an organization which then keeps focusing on the customer with a revolving door business of employees constantly changing back and forth. We picked up on this theme in our relatively short journey, and then had some few focused exercises on what we stand for. Contrary to my peers here, Roche as a brand is relatively lesser known in India compared to some of the European and US markets and all that. So we picked on a few themes, looked at what might chime in with some of the employees and some of the things. And one thing we recognized very soon is it's one thing to write code, it's another thing to save lives writing that particular code. So the end is there, but the means that you're using. So we started positioning the technology and the work we're doing as a means to achieve an end, and then we would then ask people, hey, what's your role in terms of, would you want to save lives and all that? We found that a positioning of that kind gave us a completely different perspective when talking to talent, as just one of the catalyzing perspectives. I won't go into the entire exercise of employee branding. I think Pradeep covered some extensive perspectives in that particular space, but just sort of highlighting that point, 2 points there. One is lasting customer benefit comes only when the employees stay front and center of attention. So employee branding is super critical in that scheme of things. And second, if you look at not just the end, but the means associated with it and weave that into an employee branding story, it makes for a much richer employee branding value proposition. That has helped us in the grand scheme of things. We haven't had too many challenges in getting talent, not to mention a wonderful talent acquisition team that we have. But we haven't had, and then once talent came in, we have generally been able to retain talent for a relatively long time in our relatively short journey in whatever way in shape and form it is. So those are two of the points I wanted to highlight on this particular theme.
Hey, Bharat, I'm back.
Yeah, Vishal, yeah.
I don't think the network gods are happy with Pradeep and me today. So, Pradeep, we'll need to do something about it. All right. So, like I was talking, right, and I think Pradeep, you covered it, and Raja, you hit upon a few very key things there in terms of how what you pitch to your associates as to what do they want to do. So, gone are the days when people were looking just for compensation, benefit, and job security, right? I think as you get into the newer talent pool, they're really looking for a sense of belonging, a very strong purpose behind what they do. They want to be valued by the organization, and they want a space for some creative freedom, right? So that's the kind of things that the talent pool is looking for. And then don't take me wrong, they're different. They are like with any demographic, different set of people are looking for different things, and same as with the associates that we have. Right? And as an organization, we attempt to cater to these different needs of the different pool, right? Some might still be interested in the comp and ben and having a sector job, but the larger talent pool today is looking for that creativity and purpose and ability to make a difference, not just for Pfizer. I think Sukanya touched upon it, saying how do you make a difference to your mothership, right? I think, and Sukanya, in addition to that, folks are now saying, how do I really touch my customers, right? So, and are you able to provide that platform where they can innovate, they can bring their whole self through the organization on everyday basis. And as an organization, what are we doing? We are using all our human capital levers there, right? We are doing invested heavily in capability development. The newer folks want to experiment on newer things. I think uh, Pradeep gave a great example of DLT that's buzzing, and no talk would be complete without bringing Gen AI, right? So people do want to bring some Gen AI elements, a generative AI element into the workplace, and of course with AI and cloud databases getting more mainstream, everybody wants to do something in the new, right? Not all jobs are going to provide that, but can you provide mechanisms whereby they do their what is required and yet fuel this newer interest, right? So organizations are now, I mean, at least Pfizer specifically is now very heavily invested in providing the ecosystem. Some of it I touched upon earlier, right? To say what are we doing about it, and yet how do we manage that in an environment where, like Raja said, they are touching human lives, but we are moving money every day, right? We move money across the world every day, and nobody wants to lose a cent in there, right? So how do you still manage that part where folks are looking for resilient, stable systems, where we're providing the necessary SLAs to our customer, yet providing our associates an environment where they can freely innovate, where they can contribute, where they can make a difference, right, and learn new things. So that's really where our where we are positioning ourselves, saying that while we do all this, we will be able to provide you with all these other things that you're also looking for, and be that fintech everybody wants to be part of, right? And we also original because we still have a huge customer base for which we have to do the stability and where we have to provide the SLAs and such. So I think it's a good marriage that we have gotten into. And of course, all this is on the background of looking for our associates for their wellness, for their benefits, growth, learning, workplace engagement, and experience, right? That's almost becoming hygiene. And without that, all this fancy stuff is not going to work. So having that hygiene stuff, that base stuff, and providing them that extra, I think that's what has been our approach to really be creating this strong employee plan in the place. And then you talked a bit about communication, right, Bharat? So we're focusing both internal and external. Internal as in within the global services, and there are two layers of external, right? External as in everything that's in Pfizer, right? There's very purposeful communication that goes there. And then also to the larger ecosystem around us, be it the GCCs in India or the fintechs globally, right? So all these communication is targeted to different audience, and we make sure that our success stories get the light that they should get the shine on. So that's been a two-pronged approach to this.
Got it. Oh, great inputs, Vishal. In fact, one theme that seemed to resonate across all the three leaders today is around building that sense of purpose. That seems to be pretty strong, right? As we move on to the next theme, and this is again a very recurring and an interesting conversation we also keep hearing from GCCs on, hey, how are GCCs, evolving their ownership and influence across the organization. As we heard earlier today, GCCs play a role of a strategic partner, but then how are they able to really support those global enterprise-wide decisions? Again, ownership could also mean, at a hygiene level, delivery level ownership. You could have a capability ownership within the organization, maybe certain global process or product or technology owners, or even business unit owners. I don't want to put a label to the type of ownership here, though these kind of help us think in those directions. I'm curious to hear from the leaders here, especially, for example, maybe we start with Raja. Given you're a relatively newer GCCs and today you're in a position where you're driving patents for the global enterprise already, if you can maybe talk about what are some of the initiatives you have driven to help build credibility and influence within the global organization, that would be a great place to start.
Yeah, happy to do so, Bharat. Like I said, we haven't had a 10-year journey of 10 years or 20 years. Roche Information Solutions India has been in place just for 2 years. We started our journey like any other GCC organization would, which is a service organization. Hey, here's the parent organization that needs something, you deliver it. You do it as well as possible, you do it with the right level of quality, and then in simple language, that's a service role or a helper role. I mean, you're an associate to the parent organization and complete it. Early on in the journey, we recognize that this is fine, but like Vishal said correctly in the prior question, this is more the hygiene part of it. This is a bare minimum, is the right to operate, kind of thing. That probably will help you merely operate, but not really get influence from the parent organization. It's one thing to merely operate, another thing to operate at a level that gets you the right kind of influence on the organization. So we tapped in then into the parent organization's DNA to figure out what would not keep us just in the helper state, but move into a little bit more of an influencer state. And that's when we quickly recognized that Roche, the DNA of Roche is innovation. 125-year-old organization, almost always has been in the pioneer at introducing some intervention or drug or whatever be the case that has been a trailblazer. And then we realized that, all right, if we want to move from a helper to an influencer, we have to fall into a similar perspective and not just be an executioner, but be an executioner with a difference. And if innovation is the DNA, so we need to be one. And that then helps you understand. We started moving innovation into our DNA also, not just execute complete service, but do it in a way that stands, that helps us stand apart. And that's how the patenting journey came into perspective. We said, no, we're not just going to execute. We took the help of our chief software engineer and then gradually got different units to work together to ensure that we are not just executing, but executing in a way that sets us apart actually. That's where the whole journey started, and we said we will look at different aspects that get us influence. We soon started recognizing after this innovation came in that more the units that are present or more the business units of Roche that are present here, that will be more beneficial because it helps us extract greater degree of benefit. We are able to now provide innovation across the entire spectrum. So that's when we started with the information solutions unit, moved quickly to the Roche diagnostic solutions, moved from there further to Roche diabetes care unit, which is now going to have its R&D unit here, and then moved on and on and on. We are now talking to the Roche pharma unit with more number of units setting up their operations within the GCC organization. We now have a breadth. So we started with depth, which is where innovation and all of these things came. Depth led us to breadth, and then we moved further, etc. In 2 years, we found that this combination of depth, breadth helped us get a significant degree of buy-in from the parent organization, significant degree of executive support from the parent organization, which has set us on a right course. Without delving too deep into all the other things, the investments the parent organization is making here have been significant in a short duration. In investments of all kinds, from facility investment to innovation investments to investments in terms of future growth strategies that we are planning right now. All of them are an outcome of this influence that we have got with the parent organization. All along, we did not lose sight of the absolute end customer, which is the patient that we are serving. Pradeep spoke about that one during his prior themes. So we didn't lose sight of any of those things because our PowerPoint decks end with doing now what patients need. Patient is front and center. So we didn't lose any of those things. That's where the long-term thing comes in. So those three perspectives, I think, set us an appropriate course to have the right influence with the parent, move from a helper to a critical cog, to integral part of the parent organization itself, and helped us get the executive support that positioned the GCC for long-term success.
Correct. And Vishal, I know, as you said, true fintech firm, and you've been driving quite a few initiatives and perhaps even driving certain solutions. How has this whole journey of becoming that strategic entity through global evolved over time?
Right. So Bharat, for us, things changed a whole lot when we started walking in the shoes of customer, right? Once you understand what the customer is going through, right? you understand, what its user preferences are, what are the market dynamics, what are the daily living challenges, what are the goals and business objectives they want to meet, right? It makes sense for anybody across the world to be invested in solving for them, right? So our pivot came in when we encouraged our associate on an everyday basis to walk into the shoes of customer. Once you walk the shoes of customer every day, you know what is going on there, right? And that is exactly what's happening in the parent too. It's not like any different. So the moment you do that, these lines become very blur as to where is the business and where is the GCC sitting, right? And that makes us an indispensable contributor and an influencer, right? The moment you start saying this is for the client, this is for the customer of the client, right? And of course, it doesn't happen by itself. We need to have we need to put some structures within, right? We need to have the right kind of talent set within. We need people to engage in our customer discussions. We need them to understand the marketplace. So we have a market research team which works and helps all our associates understand which way the market is heading, what are the white spaces that they're entering, what is our customers looking for, right? As well as bring in that freedom, or help associate be confident that they can challenge the status quo. I think to the point which Sukanya made earlier, right? Are you helping them fail fast? Are there repercussions of failing, or are you celebrating some of these failures and helping them move forward, right? Yet meeting all the things that your customer needs. So I think, not I think, but we've been able to demonstrate this, right? I'm not going to go into the examples which we already have told NASCOM, because people would have read that. But let me take three new examples, right? One of our biggest platform, or bigger platform, not the biggest, but is bigger platform, is something called as Clover, which is a merchant-facing POS kind of system. We call it an entire ecosystem because it goes beyond that. And within that, there's one vertical for restaurants, right? Now, there was the kitchen display system which was envisaged here, right? Which connects the front end order taking to your kitchen, right? Earlier, you'd see people taking these notes on paper, then going to kitchen, handing it over. But here now the kitchen sees it directly. Some of you would have seen this in McDonald's, not that we did it, but some of you would have seen it there, right? So putting this on the POS itself, not for it to be an external system, right, is and in giving that integrated environment was something that was conceptualized here. It was built through, and it's now in production, right? So this is an entire life cycle that comes in. Another example on similar lines, which has been now put into one of our products, was around personal finance management. The brilliant part here is it came out of an hackathon, right? And I think there was a question to say, does it have to be big bang innovation, or can it be incremental? The hackathon addressed really a small part, right? But and so it doesn't have to always be big bang, but it led to big bang, right? Because it then got curated, then the business got involved, so the collaboration across started, right? So the idea came from hackathon, the collaboration started, everybody got involved, then we did an MVP very quickly. Uh, it went into the product roadmap, and now it's in general availability for our customers to be using, right? And is actually a revenue generating feature within a very large application. So that has happened. So you're connecting your small incremental one to actually making it a big bang feature, revenue generating, customer centric innovation solution. And finally, there is now entire products like the check free next, right, which is a bill payment system. The it is completely being driven from India, right from product vision all the way till the customer support at the back end, right? So the entire spectrum is now being driven out of it. And So when you do all these things, Bharat, the paradigm shifts, right? It is you. I mean, to use the words that we used earlier, right? You have now got the ticket to play, and then there is, and all the lines kind of blur as to who is business, where is the GCC, who's your customer, and such, because it adds so much value to the ecosystem that it automatically uh, gets its green light at every stage, if I might, right? So that's been our attempt. This is, I would say, this hasn't come overnight. This has been a purposeful journey that we have gone through, and there are various intermediate steps that has led us to here. Does it stop here? No. There are, of course, going to be next steps and the next iteration as we go along.
Got it. Thanks, Vishal. Now we also will take few questions, and one of them very pertinent to this conversation, right? The question is, hey, many GCCs often look for big bang innovations. Influence perhaps is often associated with how big the impact could potentially be. The question here is that the only approach? Are you also encouraging incremental innovations? Vishal, I know you slightly touched upon it. Pradeep, would love to hear your thoughts on balancing incremental versus big bang ideas.
No, I think I'd probably just build out on what Vishal just said. I think so. The answer lies in between. I think it's not a world where we choose one or the other. It's a world where we choose both. I think we should attempt both. And I'm speaking probably, I'm out on a limb here. Raja, correct me if I'm wrong, but in drug research, both would be relevant. I'm sure Raja makes investments as an organization in solving those big ticket medicine and innovations, and it's a multi-year process, but there's also incremental drug efficiency improvements that probably he and his team work on. It's the same when it comes to banking. I think we will always and for that matter in any GCC in general, I don't think only focusing on incremental will help or the other. If you focus on only incremental innovations, then the challenge that we will face is that we might not have the impetus and it might not get the visibility or draw in that energy levels from the organization. If we only prioritize big bang innovations, as you rightly asked, that doesn't work either, because invariably it is your 10th idea which is going to succeed, right? So the first 9 will not work. So if you're only going to celebrate the 10th, the first 9 have also got to be celebrated, which will not happen if you look at only big bang innovations and celebrate that. So in the answer in short is that GCC should focus on both, and they do. I think we are a fairly mature ecosystem in the country today and in the world at large, right? So at least that's the observation that I have seen working across a few different GCCs.
And Sukanya, I would love to hear your thoughts again as someone who's been observing quite a few GCCs. What's your take on incremental versus big bang?
No, I think everybody's mentioned it. Both are critical. You can't have just only innovation teams within your organization. Your every team member has to think about what is their day-to-day work and how can they do it better, or how can they do it smarter or faster. And so that ownership, I think, lies with everybody within the organization, who has to think about a better way of doing what they're doing, or whatever is the end goal of they need to achieve, and what's a smarter way to do it. So I think that's something that every organization encourages. Hackathons often are a good way to solve some of these challenges that people face on a daily basis, but they don't necessarily have the bandwidth to kind of work on them. And important long-term big bangs are always critical, because that's how you shape your value proposition for the long run, right? We have to understand that some of the small things are really important, but they will not always get the same visibility as some of these big bangs would. And that's important for you to create the charter for the long run. And without the day-to-day incremental, your work is going to be boring, and you're not going to be bringing that value proposition. And yeah, so I think, Raja, do you have some comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, somebody asked, how do you become a big shooter? And the guy said, a big shooter is nothing but a small shooter who shoots consistently. Like that, what's a big bang innovation? You do small incremental innovations that becomes the DNA, that becomes the culture, culminating in big innovations. So exactly the point that not only are both required, one is required for the other and one builds on the other, is how I see the whole thing.
Yeah, I was just going to
And
add, and I think you kind of summed it up so well, Raja. I was just going to say that you focus on getting the culture of innovation right in a fail-free, fear-free environment. The innovation outcomes will keep coming in.
Couldn't agree more. It's about the culture, Pradeep. Right?
totally. And I just want to, to the earlier question of ownership, I just wanted to add, like, from my experience, GCCs who have been proactive in showing the potential of what can be done have been faster in kind of going through the maturity curve, right? Uh, People have moved into the pull mechanism. So they come up with ideas, they come up with possibilities, they highlight problems that they face on a daily basis while running the process and how they can solve it. And that helps in the ownership journey. If the idea incubates with you, the ownership very high chances are that will lie with you. So think about be in that problem solving mode and showcase the possibilities. It's going to get you through that curve much faster.
Great inputs from the panelists. Few things that stood out for me, right? One, fail fast, create that environment that you're going to help deliver more. Secondly, the sense of purpose, both from supporting the customers and also inculcating that within the talent internally. And lastly, excellence being a habit, not as a one-time effort. Some really great inputs from the panel discussion today. I know there were a few more questions, we couldn't take it, but happy to get to them offline. Thank you so much, all the panelists, for joining this discussion and sharing your inputs. Thank you to all the listeners for actively participating in this conversation. We look forward to more such interactions in the future. Stay tuned.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.